Hey everybody, and welcome to the Fat Bike Show. It's episode 7 and we're in a swanky new studio. So what have we got coming up today? Well, we've got Fat Bike news. We've got the skills wheel where I try for the first time ever to master a track stand. We've got shop talk with our friend Sam at BIKEMONGER. And Sam is looking at SALSA versus Surly. He's got his hands on the new 2021 bikes from those manufacturers, so he's going to compare and contrast for us. We've also got a feature, 7 changes you can make to your fat bike or mountain bike if you suffer from a bad back. We have a hello from fat bikers around the world, and we have the continuation of my favourite segment, which is Trail Heroes, where we just recognise and say thank you to volunteers who build and maintain the trails that, quite frankly, we take for granted. So that's what's coming up. Let's get on with the show. So what's in the news this week? Well, my own personal news is this week I was invited to do an interview for the MTB Tribe podcast. It is a fantastic series. They normally have riders and people in related to mountain biking who really know their stuff. So it was a bit of a change for them to interview me. Thoroughly enjoyed doing it. Gareth at MTB Tribe, fantastic bloke. So please check them out. And my episode I think is coming out in a couple of weeks. The big news is, prior to this interview, I did a bit of digging and I began to realise that us fat bikers, we're not quite the niche we think we might be. There are over 72,000 members of fat bike specific Facebook groups. Now, yes, there are people who are going to be in multiple groups, but that's still a pretty big number. And our wonderful sponsor, Fat Bike Club, has over 30,000 supporters themselves. So we're not quite the niche we think we might be. And I also started doing some digging about fat bike manufacturers. And do you know how many I found? I'm pausing for dramatic effect. Have a look at this list. I found 41 manufacturers of fat bikes, many of which had 2 or 3 models. Now, what I'd like to do is create a definitive list. Now, I realise that I'll have missed many out. I mean, I thought I was doing pretty well to find 41, and some of them will no longer be making bikes. But I'm going to put this full list in the description below. So please have a quick look. And let me know in the comments if I've missed any out or whether there are some that you know are offering bikes or some that have cancelled. And let's get a really good list together and make it a definitive source for all fat bikers. Other news this week is I got introduced to a guy called Jamie Quinlan. And Jamie is rides with a friend of the show, a guy who got in contact with me. And Jamie suffers from cerebral palsy, which would be enough to stop most people getting out. But Jamie keeps riding. He has to use a trike because his balance is affected. So he's got a fat tyre trike. So this week I found out Jamie went out and hired a very modern fat trike. And had a right laugh with his mate doing it. So I just wanted to say, Jamie, thank you for being everything us fat bikers should be. You're not letting anything stand in your way and you're just going out with your mates and having a ride, and we salute you for it. So you might remember from the last episode I did this horrible feature which I didn't want to do, called Skills Wheel, where a mate of mine told me I had to put various mountain bike skills that in truth we should all have and try and accomplish one. So the wheel spun and it landed on track stand. I have never been able to do one of these, but I had a secret weapon. I know of this great YouTube channel called ROXY'S Ride and Inspire, and I happen to know Roxy had a couple of videos about how to do a track stand. So let's have a look at how I got on. And this initial bit is, there's no camera trickery here, I just am absolutely useless. Right, let's have a look at the start point, and I put on flat pedals. I thought that was smart. That is literally as long as I can do a track stand for. I'm a bit embarrassed actually watching this. But that's my concentrating face and everything. Almost. Look at those wild swinging arms.
I then tried to work out whether I just had any balance whatsoever. Turns out I don't. Day one did not go well. I can't even balance standing on one leg. Roxy, your videos better be good.
You are in the nerve centre of the Dicking About studio, or my lounge. I'm here with my assistant director Gwen, and we're going to watch Roxy's channel. So have a look here. We're going to look at Roxy and we're going to check out her video on how to do a track stand, and based on that, see how we get on. Let's have a look.
Hello and welcome to the ultimate track stand tutorial. Today I would like to show you in 5 steps how you can get to the track stand.
A big talk, Roxy, 5 steps. The first one is this ratcheting, which I was trying to do here, where you don't do a full pedal stroke, you ratchet backwards and forwards. And that's combined with step 2, which is trying to practice ratcheting whilst doing a figure of 8. It's significantly easier if you don't have a golden retriever that will get in your way and then knock over the cups anyway. The next stage is to balance your bike, your front wheel, up against a wall or something. And this in theory makes it easier to practice finding your balance point. Well, that's the theory. I could not get the hang of this. I actually found it more difficult, even with a point that in theory should make it easier, balancing against the wall. But I tried, I kept persevering. Look at that wild swing. I spent a day on this. And then the next stage was using a hill. And I found this the most difficult. The idea is that you can roll back gently and you use that to help you balance, but I found that incredibly difficult. I was even thinking about track stands when I was out with my mates.
Okay, who can hold it longer? Here's the who can hold it the longest track stand challenge.
No,
Jesus.
Okay, I was actually really quite committed to this and I was practicing. We'd had nothing but rain. And I had a couple of epiphanies. And one was I was looking down, so as soon as I started looking up, things started slowly getting a bit easier. The key point about this phase in learning was I felt at long last, I felt like I was making some progress, and there was some tangible progress, which gave me enthusiasm to keep going. Look at that, that's almost one. And the ratcheting backwards and forwards, rather than just grabbing the brake on and then, you know, either doing it or not, was an absolutely brilliant lesson for Roxy to teach. If you think you're bored now, this was me about 2 hours into this.
Close.
Okay, here we go. I hope everyone's loving my new shaved head and beard look. I'm trying to become a Bond villain.
Yes.
This is it. There's a bit in this section here where if you think I've paused the video, that shows you. There we go. Absolutely chuffed to bits.
Okay, I'm really quite pleased with myself, but I've got to share that that was really hard going. The first couple of days, the weather was terrible. It was raining. I was making almost no progress, and I kind of talked myself into the fact that, do you know what? I'm just not going to be able to do this. But I kept persevering and trying not to jump between steps, etc. So every day I was out there. A couple of other things. Roxy has a second video about 10 mistakes people make when they're trying to track stand. That is a great video to watch as well, because halfway through trying I watched that and there were a couple of bits in there where I thought, oh, I've been doing that. And the main one was I was looking down all the time when I should have been looking up. You know, forget what the wheel's doing, looking up and concentrating. And that was fantastic. So Roxy, thank you so much. Your videos really worked. Guys, go and check out Roxy's Ride and Inspire. She's got some great tuitional videos for most mountain bike skills.
Hello Richard, hello everyone. Well, last time I promised we were going to talk some more about winterising fat bikes, but as it happens just this week we've had a new delivery of the new version of the Surly ice cream truck and also some SALSA mucklucks. So I thought it actually might be interesting just to have a look at these two bikes since they're straight out of the box and compare them, because they're, on the face of it, really similar bikes. They're both fat bikes, they've both got big 4.8-inch tyres, both got fairly long top tubes. The muckluck is actually slightly shorter, but only by about 10mm. Short seat stays, and they both cost pretty much exactly the same, around about £2,300. So as I say, on the face of it, two very similar bikes. Okay, so the biggest difference is the frame material. The muckluck here has got an aluminium frame, so you've got some nice hydroforming, great big welds here at the stress points, and it also comes with a carbon fork. There's a carbon version of the frame also if you're feeling particularly spendy. Turning to the ice cream truck, it's a lot simpler. It's good old-fashioned chromoly steel. In this instance, Surly's proprietary Natch double butted tubing. As you can see, it's just got straight tubes, got nice neat welds. There's been an awful lot of talk, a lot of words wasted about the various differences in the ride quality between steel and aluminium. I don't really want to get involved in that, except to say that if you're riding on 5-inch tyres, then the difference, which is already subtle, is going to be even more subtle. The other question people will inevitably ask is what's the weight difference? Again, I don't really want to get too hung up on weight. When you're talking about fat bikes, it's not like you're going to be racing along if you're likely to be carrying a lot of stuff. A few hundred grams here and there isn't going to make all that much difference compared to, say, letting 5 psi out of the tyres. Having said that, just so you know, obviously the Surly it's about a kilo heavier for the complete bike. A lot of that, some of it's in the frame, and a lot of it's in the steel fork, as opposed to the carbon one on the muckluck. The Surly tyres are also heavier. They're kind of slightly more heavy duty than the 45 North tyres on the muckluck. Okay, both bikes have pretty modern standards. They've got head tubes that will take a tapered steerer. They've got 51mm IS brake mounts, and there are a few differences, particularly here around the rear dropout. SALSA uses this rather ingenious replaceable dropout there alternator system, which means you can actually swap out the dropout plates, so you can accommodate all sorts of different axle standards. There's a single speed version, there's a version with rack mounts, so it's extremely versatile. Not cheap though, the plates themselves cost about 30 quid each. On the Surly they achieve kind of similar levels of versatility, but a lot more simply. There's a horizontal slot so you can run it single speed if you want to. You can't see, but behind here there's actually a cutaway, so there's a vertical dump out so you can drop the wheel out. And again, there are slotted mounts for the brakes, so you can adjust those. Both bikes have routing for internal routing for dropper post cables, and also on the muckluck the cables and hoses are also run internally through the frame. Surly much more traditional, just the standard full length hoses. For bike packers out there, they've both got pretty good luggage options. They've got 3-pack mounts and 2 sets of bottle cages. They've also both got 3-pack mounts on the fork, so you can carry extra bags there. The Surly also has lots of bosses for mounting front racks. It's got bosses on the upper, mid and lower fork leg. It's also got 2 sets of potential rack mounts on the rear. So if you're really wanting to load things up, then that gives you lots of options. Okay, turning to the componentry, both running a 1x12 drive chain, so gearing is pretty much identical. It's a SRAM SX Eagle on the Mukluk, whereas the Surly, you can't actually see it because it's on the other side, but it gets the Shimano SLX, which is a couple of steps up in the kind of pecking order, so it probably wins there. SLX doesn't extend to the brakes though. It gets Tektro Geminis, kind of a budget level hydraulic brakes, pretty similar to the SRAM levels on the Mukluk. Wheels, pretty similar really. This has got the Sunringle mule foot 80mm rims. Surly's got my other brother Darryl. If they didn't have the branding on, you'd be pushed to tell the difference. So really not much difference there. We talked about tyres a couple of shows back, and we mentioned the Surly Bud and Lou 4.8-inch front and rear specific tyres. Really good, particularly in kind of muddy or loose conditions. As I say, front and rear specific, but they're pretty chunky units compared to the 45 North, which are a bit lighter, a bit nimbler. If it makes sense to talk about those kind of things on a 4.6 tyre, but again, both good tyres. So I guess the final question is, which one is better? Which one should you get? And there isn't really a right answer. I mean, they're both great bikes. As I said at the beginning, they're both pretty similar. They're both great all-round fat bikes. Just depends where your emphasis is going to lie. If you want a kind of zombie apocalypse bike that's going to roll through pretty much everything, what it can't roll through, it'll roll over. Shrug off all the kind of knocks and bumps and scrapes, then the Surly is perhaps the right choice. Or if you want to load it up with front and rear racks and go on extended trips, then again it's got slightly better provision for that. If you want something a little bit svelter, a little bit more modern looking, with some of the kind of bells and whistles you find on more contemporary bikes, then perhaps the Mukluk. But again, as I say, they're both great bikes, and I would say whichever one you get, you won't be disappointed. I would certainly be happy with either of them. Okay, and now it's back to Richard.
Sam, thank you so much for that. Great review, and I really like the look of that new SALSA. I think that's a beautiful looking fat bike. So we will be back with Sam in the next episode. If you've stopped riding your mountain bike or fat bike, or you're riding it less because you've got a bad back, I'm going to show you 7 things you can do to make it easier. Let's start at the front of the bike and right at the end, and it may seem silly, but grips. And on the table here are examples of things I've spent 15 years chopping and changing because I had a prolapsed disc and I found it incredibly painful. Then I had a plastic spacer put in, so I had an operation, and so I've been tweaking all of these things with a mountain bike over the years to set it up to help me with my bad back. And it does start with the grips. If your grip is too small, if you do that and you just really tense, you should be able to feel it down there in your back. Now, if your grip size is too small, for whatever size hands you've got, if it's too small, you end up gripping too tightly, and that goes all the way down your shoulders and down your back. So it may seem really silly, but that's one thing to look at. if you're getting pain that's going through your shoulder, just consider trying a different grip. You may benefit from one that has the extra geometry to place your depending on your style of riding, the geometry, you've got a flatter surface. Or you may want to consider bar ends that go on so that you can change your riding position. So that's number one, your grips. Second, as we work down the bike, is the handlebars themselves. And two things about the handlebars. One is the width. You've got to have a comfortable width. And most people say you put your arms out as if you're doing a press up, and that's pretty much the comfortable width. If you're doing more downhill style, you might want it slightly further apart. But if it's too wide, again, if you're very, very aware of your back, stand up straight, and you get to that point, you can feel it on your back. So one is the width of the bars. The other thing is the height of the bars. When I first started riding, I had these they were almost flat bars. They were a nice enough width. The grips were too small. I realised that. I was gripping too tightly. But because they were low bars, I was leaning forward. I was getting pulled down on the bike. And that was uncomfortable. So what you can do is you can get a riser bar. And riser bars come in different lengths. So this is, I think, a 25. And for a while I thought, oh, that feels a bit better. I was just a fraction more upright, and it felt a bit nicer on my back. And then I went up from a 25, and these are 38, this riser I have on my bike at the moment. And as soon as I put them on, it just felt like a more comfortable and a more natural position to be in. So that's number two. Number three is the stem on your bike. Now, the good people, the experts at whoever designed your bike came up with a stem that was kind of generic, the average stem that would fit the geometry of the bike. But we're all different. Some of us have shorter arms or longer arms and the reach. And finding that reach, the perfect reach, is very important. My bike originally came with a relatively long stem. And again, because I've got a small torso, short arms, I felt I was reaching out too far. So I then experimented, and you can see, I spent a huge amount of money on your behalf dicking about with this stuff to find the right product. So I've tried lots of different lengths, and eventually I found that a 50mm was the right length to me. Through lots of trial and error, and these don't have to be expensive. Like everything else in the mountain bike world, you can get a really expensive one or a really cheap one. And I suddenly realised the combination of these slightly higher bars, slightly bigger grips, and a slightly shorter stem gave me a nicer riding position. So that's number three. Number four, we're not quite in order, coming down here, is the pedals. You will probably have flat pedals. The idea is of changing to clipless pedals for a bad back may seem crazy because you feel like you're locked in. But of course what it does, so you haven't got the movement relaxing. However, once you're locked into the correct position, I've only got the flats on at the moment because I was practicing track stands. Once you're locked in with your cleats in the right position and you know that you're always in that same position, there is a lot of comfort. Your back you aren't suddenly slipping a foot off the pedal, at which point there's that tiny little, if you go over a tree root, and it's so easy to do, your foot slips slightly off the pedal. That is going straight to your lower back. If you're clipped in, you are more secure on the bike. You have a more secure footing, in my opinion, for actually not making short, sudden motions that will result in tweaking your back. So that's number four. Number five, the seat post. A dropper seat post, even if you're not doing extreme mountain biking where you feel like you've got to drop the seat post because you're going to do a 30-foot gap jump, there is still a great advantage to, if you're doing most mountain biking trails, single track, having the ability to, if you're going over something, even gentle drops or rolling down rocky things, to get the saddle out of the way. You're probably not going to go down a huge amount. Most people I know, you drop your saddle that far, but you're only actually moving that far because you've got a bad back. but just having the saddle out of the way and going through that period where you're just a bit more relaxed and a bit more fluid because the saddle isn't there, I think is a great addition, and it should be one of the first things you change on a mountain bike if yours didn't come with a dropper post. It doesn't mean you're doing big jumps, it just means you're getting it out of the way when the situation demands it. 6, saddle. Not the type of saddle. You find one that's comfortable for you, but the angle of the saddle. It makes a huge difference. And the general rule in all cycling, irrespective of how high your handlebars are, is your saddle as a start point should be exactly level. Even if the handlebars are there or the handlebars are there, you don't alter that to fit your handlebars. That start point should be level. Now, depending on your back, it may be more comfortable to tilt it slightly one way or the other. But in all my years, in the experience of tweaking and changing, etc., having the saddle completely level acts as a completely neutral spot. Because all the other times you're sitting in a chair, in a whatever else, the chair, you're not going to sit on any other surface. You go to the pub and you sit on a bench. It is not tilting for your convenience or comfort, is it? The chair in your office isn't tilting for your convenience or comfort. Generally, chairs are designed to be flat because that's the most appropriate way to sit. So consider that. The other part of this, the second half of this, is moving your saddle forward and back. The general rule of thumb I found, I'm sure I read it somewhere with someone who's got far more intelligence than me, is you'd put your elbow at the front of the nose of your saddle and your middle finger, I'm doing it like this so I wasn't accidentally rude. So your elbow goes against the front of the saddle and your middle finger should hit the middle of the cap. Simple as that. That, as a rule of thumb, is pretty good in working out how far your saddle should be away, and it just creates a cockpit of that is comfortable and secure. And a top tip, if you've got multiple bikes, if you do nothing else, they could be different bikes for lots of different disciplines. As a general rule, if you've got a bad back, one thing I found is if on every bike the front of the saddle, you put your elbow on the front of the saddle, the nose of the saddle, your middle finger hits the bolt. That is, if that's consistent between all your bikes, you can jump from one to the other and not suddenly think, oh, this feels a bit different. So that's a top tip. And the final thing is, the change you can make is, a lot of us ride with rucksacks. I like having a rucksack. I like carrying tools, and if you can get the weight off your back, it's an advantage. And I've just started doing this. So I've taken this, I reviewed it a couple of episodes ago, this Fidlock water bottle. Super impressed with it for water. What I've done now is, because I'm desperately looking at ways I can take the weight off the rucksack off my back, is you can either try one of the, what we call them in the UK, bum bags. But I still think that weight's on your lower back. So I've taken this, and rather than fill it with water, I've, just as an experiment, managed to fit pretty much all the tools I would use out on the trail, or genuinely take with me, spare bits of chain link, etc. You know, even that CO2 canister. Pushing brake pads apart if they've been seized on the trail. What else have we got in here? A pro tool to plug your tyres if you get a big rip across the tyre. And a multi-tool, which does 90% of things. All of these things, spare headscarf because it's freezing cold, one gets it. All of these things are fitted in the bottle. So I can now carry a couple of gels in my pocket and have all my tools not in a rucksack weighing me back down, but actually fit them to the bike and have the weight on the bike, not on your back. So there you have it. There are 7 things I've changed on my mountain bike to make it more comfortable because I've got a bad back. Try them out. 1, 2, 3. I would recommend all of them. Give them a try and let me know in the comments if it's worked for you. If you've been following my other series of smaller mountain bike channels, you should be checking out, you should have seen OGMTB. Old Guy Mountain Bike, and that's Rick Gray. Now Rick has finally seen sense and got himself a fat bike. So he sent a video to introduce her. Let's have a look.
Hi everybody, my name's Rick. I'm the OG, and I'm officially fat. I'd like to introduce you to my new friend, Baloo.
Baloo is a specialized fat boy I'm going to be rocking around the inland northwest of Washington and northern Idaho, USA.
Right, it's time for Trail Heroes, and we're going to the Queen Elizabeth Country Park in Hampshire and the Queen Elizabeth Country Park Trail Collective. These guys put in a huge amount of work. They've built and maintained these trails. I've ridden there a couple of times, and do you know what? It didn't cross my mind to think someone must have put in a huge amount of effort, or a lot of people put in a huge amount of effort to build and maintain them. So guys, thank you so much. The trails there are fantastic. I donated to their page because I think it's fantastic to support this cause. I've even signed up for one of their dig days to go and actually, physically help. I will tell them about my bad knees and my bad back, and I'm probably just the guy who goes out for coffee actually. But can I firstly say thank you to those guys, and also if there are trail builders, look them up in your area, your local area. Why not give one day and go and help on a dig or contribute in some way? That's it for the show. Thank you so much for watching. If you know of any trail heroes that you think should be getting some credit, let me know. And if you'd like to share your fat bike, just send me a clip. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you can, and I'll see you next time.